This is Join Us in France, episode 269. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and on the podcast today, I bring you a great conversation with Elyse on UNESCO World Heritage sites. This was suggested by a listener, and I thought, oh, great idea. I hadn't thought of that. We talk about why they matter and some of the ones you might want to see in France and also in the south of France, where we see them more, so we know them. I am off to Paris tomorrow to map out and produce my Saint-Germain-des-Prés voice map tour. And for details, go to joinusinfrance.com/audio tours. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/269. The number 269. And if you're planning a trip to France, the site is chock full of great resources. You should check it out. Bonjour, Elyse.
Bonjour, Annie.
How are you on this beautiful sunny day?
I am fine.
Oh, good.
Really.
We're talking about UNESCO World Heritage sites in general.
In general, and
also
specifically in France.
Right, specifically all of France or the Southwest?
I thought we'd go over a general idea of all of them in the sense of explaining a little bit what they are and where they are. And then we can talk about the ones we know in the Southwest here.
Excellent.
How's that?
All right. Take it away, woman.
Okay. So I know that we often spend time explaining that these are great places to visit when they're marked as World UNESCO Heritage Sites. But in fact, of course, as you did say to me, and I realized you were right, many people don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And so it impresses us, but we think that's a good selling point for going to see something.
Right.
But some people go, okay, so what? Whatever, really. Okay, tell me something else, know. Does it have pretty flowers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I thought, and I agree with you, this is a great idea to talk about what that means.
Sure.
Give a little bit of background information on how this began, actually, which is actually fascinating. And then talk about how many there are in France, basically the kinds of things that are considered to be now World Heritage Sites. And we can talk specifically about some of them we've been to, because some of them are here in the Southwest, some of them are not. Some of them, most people who've been to France have visited, for example, Versailles, right?
Yeah.
Which, of course, can be visited without it having to be this label, but it adds to its prestige.
Right.
So
I think that's what it does, is prestige.
It's very much prestige. But also, this is something, that's why I was interested when I actually did the background information, which I didn't realize. This was created by the United Nations. Mm-hmm. But it's only been in existence since 1960. Which I did not know, which I somehow thought was much earlier, but that's, of course, because the United Nations really only exists since after World War II.
My cat has something to say about the UNESCO.
Your cat wants us to include her as a World UNESCO Heritage Site. That's what I think. She wants to be known as a living example of an endangered species, which she's probably going to be soon. She keeps this up. As much as I love cats.
The World Heritage orange cat.
Orange cats, yes. Very much an endangered species. I see her.
Skinny orange cat, mind you.
She's gone away. She maybe understood what I just said. But basically, there are two reasons that this label was created. And of course, that meant that they had to put money into this. But it was created because... I think maybe because in the 1950s and 1960s, after the aftermath of World War II and all kinds of new construction going on in the world, a group of people, and I really don't know who, decided that a lot of very important ancient things were in danger of disappearing, in danger of never being seen by anybody. And therefore, they thought it would be a good idea to try and do something that would bring in money to help save some of these places. And of course, what's interesting, if you think about it, is that in France, I may be wrong, but I think it's the first country that officially created in the 19th century the idea of Ministry of Culture and patrimoine to be saved. This is really very old as a concept in France. So it's kind of like taking the same thing and using it worldwide.
Okay.
Really worldwide. And the way it began, which is why it actually started in 1960, it was with the building of the Aswan Dam in Egypt. Because the Aswan Dam, which is upriver on the Nile, which in terms of Egypt means down, because up is down and down is up in Egypt on the river.
I'll take your word for it.
Upriver is not where you think it is. It's the other end. In the area that was Nubia, the kingdom of Nubia in the past, which is really southern Egypt going into, if I'm not mistaken, Somalia, or Sudan probably. But it's the area that in ancient times was called the kingdom of Nubia. And it's where the Nile starts flowing up into the very built-up area of Egypt. And so the Egyptians started working on this dam with money from France and England. And in order to build it, they were going to drown many, many, many temples, many magnificent Egyptian temples and pyramids that are...
Pyramids?
Yeah. I mean, this is, the whole series of pyramids and
they're close to the Nile, yes.
That are close to the Nile, but starting much further south than you imagine. I mean, they all start way, way down below, which is for them what they call the Upper Nile. I mean, that's and so what happened was, I don't know who. I should have maybe looked this up a little bit more, but some people went to the United Nations to see if they could get money from the United Nations to figure out how to save some of these monuments.
Okay.
And they did. They got, if I remember correctly, the numbers I saw were something like 80 million or something like that at the time. But what they did in order to save some of these monuments was they moved them.
Oh.
They moved them. And if you are in the United States and you are in New York and you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you will see one of these temples called the Temple of Dendur that was given as a present to the United States. One was given to each of 4 countries by the Egyptian government for saving all these other monuments by literally moving them stone by stone to dry land so that they would not be covered by the water when they built the Aswan Dam.
Wow.
And it was this...
Talk about monumental.
Oh, absolutely, monumental.
Yeah.
Monumental. Of course, the temple that's in the Metropolitan Museum it's a small temple. But still, they had to move it. These are blocks of granite and sandstone. They had to put them on a ship and move them to New York and then reassemble them.
They did this in the 1960s?
They did this in the 1960s.
Well, of course, they had already moved the pyramids.
That's right.
The obelisk. The obelisk.
Yes.
The obelisk. Paris, much earlier.
Much earlier. But imagine, so they disassembled many of these temples, moved them. One of them is called Abu Simbel, which is very important, to dry land. I'm not sure exactly in relation to where they were, how far away it was, and saved them that way. And so the Egyptian government said, okay, you guys gave us all this money and technology for doing this. We're going to give you one as a kind of present. So
very nice. Thank you very much,
It's
guys.
very nice, right? It's very, very, very nice. So that gave, I guess, UNESCO, the people who work in UNESCO, which is, of course, the agency of the United Nations that deals with culture and heritage, it gave them the idea of creating an official agency that would, in fact, deal with the preservation of very important sites.
Okay.
And after 1960, I don't know how long it took them to work this out because there is a committee. And I believe that the committee changes. I'm not sure if it changes every year. There's a chair of the committee. And what they do, like a lot of the other things that function with the United Nations, is that they change the members according to countries so that there are a few people from different continents as part of the committee all the time. Okay. So it's not overloaded with just people from either Europe or Asia or something like that. And every single year, especially in the last 30 years, as this has become much more prestigious and, of course, is very important for tourism, they receive enormous numbers of dossiers, of these folders with
applications, I guess.
Basically, it's an application, but the French word dossiers is because they're thick. I mean, it's just zillions of pieces of paper where they have to they show photos. They talk about why a particular place is important, what its history is, what it will bring to the area. It's extremely, extremely meticulous. And there are many, many, many candidates every single year. And I don't know, some of it is political. I remember not this time, but a year or two ago reading about this, because I remember that they were saying that countries like France and Spain, countries that are well known for having many monuments, keep suggesting new ones. But there's a little bit of a kind of like jealousy on the part of countries that don't have very many, because it is something that brings in enormous amounts of tourism, which means, of course, it brings in a lot of money. So they try to balance it out. And what that means is that it can take up to 10 years for a particular site to be accepted. Because every year it's kind of, it makes me think about the Nobel Literature Prize. You know, there's this negotiation going on. You know, this year we're going to give it to this person because last year we gave it to that country over there.
And somehow it always goes to a white guy.
Almost always. Yeah. So anyway,
they consider this really deeply,
very, very deeply. So this is really the background of how this came to be. And at the beginning, until 2004, there was two sets of criteria, because what they did was they established two different kinds of World Heritage sites. One literally man-made, the buildings, the monuments, the temples, the cathedrals, whatever, and the other natural sites.
Okay.
And in 2004, they changed it to make one list of 10 criteria that are slightly redundant. I'm going to kind of read them all off. But my guess is, and I'm not 100% sure, since there are 10 of them, what they probably do is they probably check them off to see how many of this particular place or site or building really fits in terms of the criteria. And then they decide. And in fact, in the numbers, right as of July 2019, in the world, there are 1,121 World Heritage sites.
Yeah.
869 are cultural.
Yeah.
Which basically means man-made. 213 are natural.
Okay.
Which means land. Or sea, land, whatever.
Yeah.
And 39 are what are called mixed.
Okay.
And they cover 167 countries. With the winners being, in terms of descending order of how many of these sites they have, as of now, China and Italy, each having 55. I can't tell you how many of those are man-made and natural, but my guess is mostly, especially in Italy, man-made. Spain, interestingly enough, is third, comes out with 48. Germany, 46. France, 45. India, 38. And Mexico, 35. So those are the top winners.
Say again, after France, it's what?
After France, we have India.
India, yeah.
Yeah, which, of course, I just actually saw 2 or 3 of them, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. And how many do they have in India?
38.
38, that's quite a few.
It is a pretty big country, you know.
Yeah.
And then Mexico, which was a big surprise to me.
And they have how many?
35.
35, which is also lots.
Yeah. So France
and the USA?
I think what I read was 20, or maybe what I read was 20 natural and 4 or 5 man-made, something in that order, but very much more natural.
I wonder about like places like Canada and Australia.
Yeah.
And I'll look them up.
Yeah, look them up, because it's interesting that obviously if you look at this list of the places that have the most, these are places where the past has been preserved as much as possible.
Right. And if you count old buildings, then obviously Canada and the U.S.
don't count too much.
Well, they're at a disadvantage.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
But what's interesting is that, and I have, of course, printed out the list of all of the sites in France. Some of them are more or less contemporary in the sense that they're very much 20th century. So it isn't just things from very far, far in the past.
Oh, I see.
So, for instance, I don't know, but I would think that maybe the Golden Gate Bridge is one in the United States.
Could be.
Mount Rushmore might be one.
Probably.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe the Empire State Building, who knows, Yeah. But it would be things like that are emblematic, of a place. However, the Eiffel Tower is not. But the reason why it's not is because
they didn't apply.
No, but I think it's because all of the center of Paris along the banks of the river is.
Oh, so the whole along the banks.
Right. So one of the sites, it says, Paris, rive de la Seine. Okay, so how much of the banks of the river and how much does it include around them?
Yeah.
I think you have to go into the details of their particular...
Well, if you think about it, the banks of the Seine have been painted by famous people the world over. And so it's not just around Paris. It's also the rest of it, probably.
You're probably right, because you're absolutely right. That's where the Impressionists went to paint, going out the Seine and heading towards...
Normandy.
Rouen, Normandy.
Yeah.
So... But it's interesting because we have 45 then in France, and as I'm looking at my list, I was trying to figure out how many of them are natural. So it looks to me like there's maybe 7 or 8, maybe 10. Let's say 10 out of the 45 are more or less natural sites, and of course France is filled with magnificent things, including of its cathedrals and palaces, and that, of course, counts a lot. What's interesting is that there are 3 sites that cross borders. So there's one that has to do with France and Spain because it's a site that crosses over the Pyrenees. That has to do with the Cercle de Gavarnie, which is in the Pyrenees, and other natural formations like that cross over into the Spanish part. Okay. There's one that's between France and Belgium that is in relation to, if I can find it. If I missed, I don't know where I put it. It has something to do with man-made, it says, I can't find it. Anyway, it has something to do with something man-made that goes back, I think, to the mining times.
Okay.
And that was both in Flanders and in France. So it's a shared site.
So maybe it's tunnels or something.
Maybe tunnels. And then the third one, interestingly enough, is in the Pyrenees, in the Alps. And it's prehistoric pile dwellings, which I guess probably means piles of stone, because I'm not sure, like the little...
Pile dwellings.
Like the little bori that you find in the countryside that are kind of these tiny little huts that shepherds used to use that.
Yeah.
Well, each region of France has a different name for it. And it says that it's a shared site on the UNESCO World Heritage list between France, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, and Italy. So it's something that crosses into the Alps.
So it happens all through the Alps.
All through the Alps, right. Huh. So, and those are the only 3 that are shared
between countries.
Between countries.
Yeah.
Right. So most of them, a lot of them, I think you and I can both guess without even looking at the list.
Pont du Gard.
Pont du Gard. Okay. We could. This list is not in historical order in terms of their age. There's another list that you can actually go on Wikipedia and see. Obviously, everything. It starts with the Romans, which is Pont du Gard.
Yeah.
Right? The Colosseum in Orange is also included. And it goes up through into the 20th century. But the majority of the things are Middle Ages.
Okay.
For instance, they're all grouped together here. So I'm just going to... You have the Cathedral of Amiens, the Cathedral of Bourges, the Cathedral of Chartres, Notre Dame, and the Cathedral and the city center of Albi.
Okay.
They're all really from a close time period.
Yeah, so the middle of the Middle Ages.
The middle of the Middle Ages. We're talking 1200s, 1300s, pretty much, and they're all incredible, magnificent, and imposing,
Yeah.
And all of them have either been totally saved or rebuilt a little after World War II.
Yeah, Notre Dame is being rebuilt right now.
Notre Dame, and you know what? I'm looking to see if Reims is on this list, but I'm just wondering whether it is or it isn't, because it certainly is fabulous.
Yeah,
the cathedral in Reims. So why?
And Bayeux as well could be.
Could be. So that's the thing, though. See, like you can ask the question, which is why certain of these places have already been put on the list, but the reason why is because it doesn't depend on the national central government. It depends on the regional government. So, for instance, coming closer to us, in 2010, Albi, Old City Center, and the Cathedral Saint-Cécile and the palace were added to the list. Mm-hmm. It was Albi and the Department of the Tarn, with money from the region, that put the dossier together to apply for the site. The federal government, well, you don't really have,
the French
central government had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
So it's the impetus of a particular area that decides, because it's a lot of work. You have to have a committee that decides how to present it, to talk about it, how to do all of this. So it takes
I'm sure they do some beautification too.
They must do a lot. And what I didn't copy out was the list of things they have to do. But there are things they have to do not just to have it, but to keep it, because the perfect example is Bordeaux, which got its label, and now I'm not sure if I can find this, more recently than Albi, so 12 or 2013 or something like that. But in Bordeaux, what is listed is not all of the old city center, but the banks of the Gironde.
Gironde or la Garonne?
The Gironde. So you have the Garonne going into the Gironde, which empties, of course, into the sea.
Okay.
Not even the wine country, which is a separate thing. It's the old city center of Bordeaux and all the beautiful squares and limestone buildings that go along the banks of the Garonne as it goes into the Gironde. And there's an old bridge there. And what happened was that here it is, Bordeaux Port de la Lune. So it's a section of the banks of the river. And then what happened was Alain Juppé, the mayor of Bordeaux, for some reason, after they got the label, a year or two after, he gave permission for the city to modernize the bridge. And people came from the organization and said, if you do that, we'll take the label away.
Oh.
You can reinforce it if you're having cracks in the bridge or something like that. But we gave this to you because you have that bridge there that looks like this, and it's part of this historic center. If you change it, forget it. You don't have the label anymore.
And so what did he do?
So he stopped the work on the bridge.
Huh.
That's it. You don't want to lose the label. Why? Because it brings in millions. It brings in millions.
Well, do people... I mean, I've never looked up UNESCO World Heritage just to go see them.
Well, let's put it this way. For certain places...
But I'm sure there are people who do that.
This is what has happened to Albi. Talking about a place we both know very well and that is very close to home. Okay? Albi was already famous for being very beautiful, the old city center. It's a very relatively small city anyway, 55,000 people, and very well preserved before all of this. But Albi, which was already a city that really attracted a lot of tourists because of its cathedral and because of the Toulouse-Lautrec Museum, decided that it wanted to have a label. So for a period of 10 years, they beautified and spruced up the old city center, cleaned it up, really all the facades of the old buildings. The old city center is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, they usually hide the garbage cans. And
they really worked. They spent a fortune. They put in little fountains, nice places for people to walk that were much more walking friendly than car friendly. They really invested a huge amount of money. They got their label with very little trouble because Albi was already considered to be very famous. And this is what happened. It is now a place that is overrun with tourists, so much so that after 2 years, the bishop of the Cathedral of Saint-Cécile and I guess the people that run the city, they got together and they made new rules about how tourists have to behave. And one of the things they said was, if you want to go into the Cathedral of Saint-Cécile and you are more than 2 or 3 people, you have to apply as a group, and you have to get the little microphone and the little earplug things.
The whisper things.
The whisper things, because what was happening was it attracted so many more people that the services couldn't be held, marriages couldn't be held, nothing was going on because there was too much noise from the tourists wandering around the church.
So I guess it puts a place on the map.
It puts a place on the map.
That maybe people hadn't thought of before. Maybe locals knew that it was gorgeous.
Right.
But maybe people from far away hadn't paid attention to it yet.
And I think that, for instance, let's talk about our particular little region. The 4 that are famous here are Alby, Carcassonne, which already attracted a lot of people. And then, of course, it was really in the 1980s, I believe, that it got its label. So, or 1990 maybe, something like that.
Yeah.
Which, of course, in the summer is totally overrun by people and probably would be anyway. But, of course, it has made it world famous. That's one of the things that this label will help do. You have the Canal Du Midi.
Ah, yes.
Which, of course, is interesting because the Canal Du Midi starts in Toulouse but goes all the way to the Mediterranean. And so it's nice because it is preserved because it is now a World UNESCO Heritage Site. But you can do a section of it and you don't have to worry about being with mobs of people because there's 147 kilometers of it going out to the sea. And then the 4th one, believe it or not, is Saint-Sernin.
Saint-Sernin, yeah.
Which is our lovely, wonderful Romanesque church.
Yeah.
And in the sense that Toulouse city center is not a World UNESCO Heritage Site, it simply means that people who come to Toulouse and want to visit may know a little bit more that there's this place that's really famous now. It's on this list. They should go see it. But it hasn't changed it into masses and masses of people because it's just one specific building.
So you think it would, like if we did get the World Heritage Site for the city center, you think it would bring masses of people?
I think it would really help tourism in Toulouse. It really would.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that it would be the kind of thing where, and of course it would have to be delimited because you can't make the entire city center of Toulouse like in Bordeaux, the World Heritage Site. It doesn't work. It's too big and it's too
Right, but you take Pont Neuf.
Heteroclite, But you could take certain parts of it, like from Pont Neuf to Saint-Sernin for sure.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It would be a bane. It would be wonderful. It would probably be good for the hotels. It would be good for people like me.
Yeah.
It would be good for the restaurants. It could turn out to be a blessing in disguise if there is not enough, like in Albi, there are not enough accommodations. They have to deal now with all these masses of people in the church. But at the same time, their museum, the Toulouse-Lautrec Museum, they have... for better or for worse, I should not say that way, but you can perhaps tell by the way I'm saying it, they have made it a very expensive museum. And they can get away with it.
How expensive is it?
It's €8.
That's nothing.
For this area, it is.
Huh.
For this area, it is. That's the difference. You see, this is not Paris, okay? So we're not talking about Paris, Louvre, and Orsay and prices there. We're talking about here. It is the most expensive museum in the entire region.
Huh.
And
which means we're too cheap.
Well, it means that they know that they can get it. Basically, is what they mean.
Yeah,
they know they can get it. So it's interesting, and so it has.
So has Toulouse applied?
Toulouse is in the process of preparing its dossier.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons. Now, you don't go into city center as much as I do, or as much as David, your husband, does. But if you walk around, you will notice the gentrification and the beautification, which has cost a fortune because they put granite on the ground. They do benches a little bit everywhere. They're trying to spruce it up and make it as walking friendly as possible.
Yeah.
And certain things are working, like around Saint-Sernin.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Very nice. But,
yeah, they changed it recently. It used to be a little grimy. They used to have this marché aux puces around there,
right.
which was a disaster.
They got rid of that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But of course, but the other thing is that the real old city center of Toulouse is just a little bit too chaotic to try and be able to control everything. And so, personally, I don't think it will happen. And if it does, it will not be soon, because there are still streets that are grungy. There are still things that they have to fix up. The criteria when you think
just in terms of, I mean, when I walk through Toulouse and the restaurants take out their massive garbage cans, it's unsightly.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they deal with rules like that.
Yeah, they need to do something about the garbage cans.
They need to do something
from
like
restaurants especially.
Right. But again, the thing is that there's an enormous competition now because more and more places and more countries want the label because it does help tourism. So things that applied 20 years ago had an easier time of getting accepted.
Yeah.
So there are a couple that I haven't I ever seen, but I had literally never heard of.
Wow.
And one of them is a little town in the Ile-de-France called Provence.
Provence.
Yeah, Provins.
Huh.
And
I have never heard of that.
Never heard of it. And it is a World UNESCO Heritage Site because it is a site that had, or maybe still has, one of the most elaborate medieval fairs.
I see.
And it's a town that has walls around it. I saw a couple of pictures of it yesterday looking it up. And I thought, whoa, I have never heard of this place. I have no idea that it even exists.
Yeah.
No? Many of them are places you could guess. You have the Historic Center of Lyon.
Yeah.
You have the old France part of Strasbourg.
La Petite France,
La Petite France. You have the Antique Theater of Orange and the Arc de Triomphe, which are, of course, the Roman ruins. You have, interesting, in Nord-Pas-de-Calais, you have the residues of the mining industry, which is considered to be an example of 20th century, 19th and I guess 20th century human activity. So it's kept for that reason. We have the caves of Dordogne, the prehistoric caves, grouped together. So not just one, but all of them grouped together is one UNESCO Heritage Site. Sometimes you have things like that where it's a grouping of things.
They're pretty close together anyway.
They're pretty close together. You have... excuse me, you have the Grotte de Chauvet, which to this day I have yet to go see. There's now a copy, and
I haven't seen it either.
I'd love to go. I'd love to go.
Yeah, but it's kind of far away.
It's far away. You need a nice long weekend to really do that. The Center of Avignon, the Historical Center of Avignon. You have Mont Saint-Michel.
Bien sûr, bien sûr.
Okay. You have Fontainebleau, Versailles, Place Stanislas in Nancy.
Yeah.
Most of these things aren't surprising.
No.
At all. I mean, and there are so many of them. There's the Basilique and the Colline of Vézelay, which is magnificent, which is in the Auvergne area.
I have not seen that.
It's magnificent. It's really magnificent. You have a place that I went to 2 years ago specifically because I had wanted to see the frescoes inside it, because otherwise it's not that imposing. And it's the Abbé de Saint-Savin sur Gartempe, which is in the area going to Niort on the way to Brittany.
Saint-Savin sur quoi?
Gartempe, Gartempe.
Okay.
Because it's an abbey, part of a monastery that has some of the oldest surviving frescoes from the 1100s. So just the building itself. I mean, the remains of the abbey. It's got a beautiful park around it. But if you're not interested in specializing in that, you might not ever have heard of it. There's another one, the Cistercian Abbey of Fontenay. I've never been. Of course. Which is where Eleanor of Aquitaine is, right?
Yeah.
Then you have things like the Causse and the Cévennes, which is a region.
Just the whole region?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mediterranean agro-pastoral cultural landscape. Okay. So it's very vague and it's very big.
Yes.
Very big, and it's like, where do you go when you go in there? Well, there are medieval villages in that area. This is where Roquefort is, basically.
Right. It's very scenic.
It's very scenic.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because the geological formations of the coast are unique, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. You have all the fortifications of Vauban.
All of them.
Well, it says fortification of Vauban. Well, he did so many of them.
Which one?
Which one? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's really strange. They don't have any.
They escarted all over France.
Yeah. Then they have the Grande Saline de Salins-les-Bains, which is...
Salins-les-Bains.
Is now I'm realizing I don't even know if that's in the Camargue or if it's on the Atlantic coast.
I have no idea.
Boy, that's one we should look up. Okay. Anyway, it's where they gather salt, guys, out there. You know, it's like
salt mining.
It's salt mining.
Yeah.
Another one that was a natural site that I noticed that was where is it? Oh, I mentioned the Pyrenees with Mont Perdu.
Oh oui, le Mont Perdu. Oui.
Mont Perdu.
I've seen it. I haven't climbed it.
And then the Chaîne des Puys, so all of the volcanic area.
Yeah, okay. I've seen them from a distance as well.
I've been through that. We did a summer vacation in that area. It's really magnificent.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Really very
And this is parts of France where most tourists never venture.
And it's gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's very nice.
If you really want green and rolling magnificent hills with tiny little medieval villages, it's absolutely magnificent. There's one in Polynesia. I can't pronounce it. Sorry, I'll try. Taputapuatea. Okay, I don't know if it's Nouvelle Caledonia or Tahiti, to be very honest.
Okay,
I have no idea.
On est largué.
Okay, I think it's a sculpture, but I'm not sure. Then you have, and this one you will of course scoff at, you have the architectural work of Le Corbusier. I knew she would do that. You hear that? Did you hear that out there? She did that. I knew she would. Okay.
I'm going to record an episode about this soon, so I have to read a book about him because I'm so convinced that he was his control freak.
His writings are really interesting. Really, he was trying to help work out the future in terms of growing populations. Basically,
control freak.
Anyway, so you have to be to do things like that, I think. Anyway, his work, which includes the huge apartment building in Marseille.
Yeah. And, la
cité glorieuse. Radieuse.
Yeah.
And then there's a church in Royan on the Atlantic coast. And then there are a couple of private houses. So collectively, his work is considered to be one of these sites. So it's very varied in the way they choose their designations. Oh, the lagoons of Nouvelle Caledonia.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's probably very pretty.
I'm sure it is. And the Gulf of Porto on Corsica, which is a place that I have been to many times and is glorious.
Yeah.
And is preserved as a natural reserve. So you can only get in there by going by foot or as a goat would, or
by driving, or by boat.
Or by boat, or little boat. Not even big boat, just little boat. So it's very, 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 the Val de Loire, all the chateaux. Okay. How many of them? It says between Sully-sur-Loire and Chalonne. I think that's pretty much where we did when we did the podcast we went from Saumur to wherever. There's a section of the Loire where you have a whole lot of beautiful chateaux, one right after the other. So they took this chunk, and that whole area is. So it's very interesting.
So it's not individual chateaus. It's just the area.
It's the area, which I assume means also the individual chateau. But then I'm not sure. That is, right. I would think that each of these chateaux can say, we are a World UNESCO Heritage Site. I think that when people go to look for places to visit, most people go to the Valley of the Loire and they think, let's go see several chateaux. You don't usually go just for one. But collectively, they became a site on the World Heritage Site. And so that's just pretty much a good...
Wow.
I just wanted to go over this because it is very interestingly redundant. But so I'm going to write through the 10 criteria. And obviously, nothing can be everything. Anyway. And you'll see how redundant it is, which is why I think it's kind of weird that they did this. Remember, before it was 6 that were cultural and 4 natural. So now they have one list of 10. How many of these you have to fulfill before you get chosen, who knows? Number 1, masterpiece of human creation. Blah, duh, of course, right? Number 2, exhibit important interchange of values over a span of time within a cultural area. And underneath it says architectural, technological, monuments, town planning, or landscape design.
Okay.
Okay, so it's kind of refining the first one as far as I can see. It's kind of giving it more of an explanation. Number 3, a unique or exceptional testimony to a cultural tradition or civilization. Now, this would be the pyramids, the things in Mayan civilization. I'm assuming, that kind of thing. The
Oh, here comes the cat again.
Here she comes, ready to attack me.
She's going to talk into the microphone.
God, she's making me nervous. The Pantheon, what do you call it in Greece? She's really disturbing me. My God.
Pantheon.
No, those things, those.
Yeah.
Number 4, outstanding example of a type of building. Now, Saint-Sernin falls into that category because it's a type of building in the sense that it's a perfect example, a glorious example of Romanesque architecture. So I guess that was how they would define that. What do you have to say about this? I can't believe this. Get her away from me. I love cats, but this is creepy.
Nanas. Allez.
I know you like me.
Okay, should I throw something at her?
I don't know. Everybody's just going to attack me. What?
So you have to know that this cat loves Elyse. Whenever Elyse shows up, the cat just push her down.
Come on, Ananas. Come on. No.
Yeah.
She doesn't. She
See,
wants to tell me
I clap my hands and the dog comes.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between dogs and cats. That's why I like cats. Okay. And that's I said that. Okay, that's an example of a traditional human settlement, land use, C, which represents cultural or human interaction. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, me neither.
I really don't. A port, maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know how they... Number 6, directly associated with living traditions, ideas, or beliefs with artistic or literary value. You got me there.
Yeah.
You really got me there. If it just said artistic,
You could fit anything into that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say churches go in there, chateaus go in there.
Or beliefs.
Or beliefs, right?
Yeah. What if they say Raelian beliefs are World Heritage Site now?
I don't know. This is amazing.
This cat is over
What am I
the
wearing
top.
today? What perfume did I put on? I don't know.
She's rubbing her face into Elise's hair.
God, she's going to bite me. I know she's going to bite me. Anyway.
That's before she does that, you should slap her and
I don't want to
knock
slap
her down.
I can't do that. Anyway, number 7, superlative natural phenomena or an area of great beauty and aesthetic importance. That's clear.
Yes, I know that.
That one we got.
Yeah.
Right? No problems with that one.
Yeah.
Number 8, outstanding examples, major stages of Earth's history, geological, land formation, geomorphic, etc.
I get that.
Okay?
Yeah.
Those ones are
That's
not.
the Grand Canyon.
That would be exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely the Grand Canyon. Number 9, outstanding example, they're all outstanding examples, of an ongoing ecological or biological process in evolution. Forests, perhaps?
Forest?
Forests.
Yeah. Like the aspen forest, the massive aspen forest in Utah.
Exactly.
Which is one organism.
One organism, which is
Yeah.
just having read the Overstory by Richard Powers, that's exactly what that's about.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah, and you know what? I camped in that forest for years, and I didn't even know it was anything special. Yeah,
Nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean, you see it, and you're like, wow, that's a lot of aspens.
Yes, exactly. And it's one organism.
Yeah.
And number 10, to contain the most important or significant natural habitats for in situ conservation of biological diversity. I have no idea what that means.
Me neither. But I do know that the cat is going to knock off your headphones.
Anyway, those are the 10 criteria. And they obviously choose among them. And I can't do this anymore.
I don't have my phone. I can't take a picture
of this.
Yeah.
It's like, what did I put on me today? She loves me so much. Anyway, everybody, the World UNESCO Heritage Sites are wonderful, fascinating. There are 45 in France. There will be more soon. And the 4 or 5 that are down here, because you can say that the Secte Gavanie is included in our region, right?
It is. And so is the Pont du Gard.
And so is the Pont du Gard. And
C'est l'Occitanie.
One place that I know has applied for it is and there's the pilgrimage route to Compostela. But okay, now I just lost I'm just having a senior moment here. The place as you go south that has the Roman ruins and the medieval village on top of the hill. Oh God. As you're going to Cirque de Gavanie. Après Martre, Toulouse.
Saint-Bertrand
de Comminges. Exactly, thank you.
That's also World
Heritage? They've applied, because what they have is, down below, they have one of the most important Roman excavation sites all through the Pyrenees.
Doesn't look like much, though.
But it's very, very important in terms of what they're... And it's huge.
Yeah.
Because at the time that Saint-Bertrand-de-Comminges was Roman, it was a major city on the foothill route across the Pyrenees. And so it had a theater, it had a Colosseum, it had everything. And then you have a magnificent Romanesque chapel that's from the 1000s. And then you have the medieval city up on top, which has a unique chapel. So,
and we did an episode on Saint-Bertrand-de-Comminges, and it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. So they have actually applied.
Okay.
So, and the three things together is the reason for the application.
Now, if that brings 1 million tourists to the area, I'm going to be surprised.
Well, I don't think it would obviously bring 1 million, but it certainly would bring in more than what they have now.
Sure.
They just...
We do what we can. We did a podcast about it. That's what we can do.
You do a podcast, and then you talk, and other things in the area. Like you have one of the other things that has been made as a dossier is all of the little Romanesque chapels in a whole section of the Central Pyrenees. Because there's a whole group of them.
Yeah.
And they're very small, and they all have unique frescoes and things like that are, of course, pieces of frescoes. But collectively, they are one thing. Yeah. Lourdes would be interesting to know if they ever have...
Well, it's a religious site. And you mentioned the religious clause in your thing, so maybe.
But it's ongoing. And then, of course, it would be fun to see what other countries have suggested as sites for them. And of course, it's usually pretty interesting, neat things.
Yeah. So in Paris, what are the big ones? So the banks of the river.
The banks of the river, Versailles.
Yeah.
Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Not the Eiffel Tower. I think that's it for Paris itself.
Wow, that's kind of laughable.
Well,
because there's so much.
There's so much, but I guess the problem is that. I would think that even the Louvre would be eligible, because not only is it in terms of the art inside and but the buildings
and the history of the chateau.
History of it and the architecture and it's so magnificent to see.
Yeah, but in Paris they have so many visitors that it wouldn't help anything. I don't think. Like, why would they bother?
Right,
because they already have more visitors than they can deal with. There goes the cat again.
Yeah, they already have more visitors. That's probably why they wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the thing is, some of these places, especially the ones that are lesser known and natural, it's to preserve them. But it's also, and I know this for a fact, in the case of Albi, it was to help bring in more tourists, and then of course
it did.
It did, and and now there are people who are complaining. But let me just one last word, because we really can obviously stop this now. But the irony of that is, for a city like Albi, so the old city center is very small. It's gorgeous. It's really well taken care of. It's a really lovely, lovely place. In fact, I am going to soon be doing a voice map about Albi Old City Center.
Excellent. And we need to say this afternoon you're recording your Toulouse voice map tour, and we're recording it, so that means it might be out in a couple of weeks, maybe?
Hopefully.
Yes, because this episode is going to air on Sunday.
Wonderful.
Very quickly.
Yes.
So, yes. So if you're coming to Toulouse, no excuses. You have to at least get Elyse's voice map, because she will take you to the best parts of Toulouse. And like we said, it should be a World Heritage UNESCO site,
and you will learn so many wonderful things.
Yeah.
And so what happened in Albi is that it's bringing in millions, literally, I think a few million people a year. But the shopkeepers are complaining because they're not taking advantage of it. They're not getting people buying things. The people come and buy an ice cream, or they sit and have lunch, which is what I typically do when I go there. And it's got some really neat little shops. But ironically, the money is going into the tourist office because, of course, people go to see the museum, the Toulouse-Lautrec Museum, which is gorgeous and has a wonderful collection. And they go to see the cathedral. But they don't necessarily do other things commercially in the old city center.
Right.
So it fills the streets up with all these tourists, but there's a certain, I think, bitterness or resentfulness on the part of some of the shopkeepers.
Well, if they're not buying, it means that you're not showing them things they want to buy. So
I think
your tune.
People don't go there to go look for a dress or shoes. Let's put it that way. They go to see these old historical things, and and I think that this was perhaps a misconception that the shops would take advantage of it, but they don't. Restaurants probably do.
Well, people eat.
That's the thing. So and then of course, if you have the streets filled up with people and the problem, for instance, Venice is a perfect example. Venice doesn't need this label. It's got its problems without it.
Yeah.
The problems being too many tourists.
Yeah.
It makes the real estate market go sky high on top of everything else, because all these people are turning their places into Airbnbs and there's no place for people to live. But also the shopkeepers, because you get all of these very horrible and very big cruise boats that come in. The people just come out, they go to Place San Marco, they maybe buy an ice cream cone and they leave. And so it fills the streets, it congests the streets with so many people, but they're not really helping the city economically in a sense, So I think it's probably good to have this label, but I think that I can see that.
Well, like anywhere, if it's over tourism is never a good thing.
It's never a good thing.
Which is one of the reasons why I am delighted to say that on this podcast, we talk about a lot of places besides Paris.
Yes.
Because Paris already has enough tourists already.
Yep.
But we have to talk about Paris, otherwise nobody would ever find us.
Right.
But there is so much more to France that is really worth visiting and enjoying. The week. So this week I'm releasing this episode, and then the week after that we're going to release an episode about Dordogne and Aveyron, and a couple who went to Sarlat and they toured around there, and then they went to Belcastel. These places are just stunning.
They're stunning. This is where we took people right to Dordogne.
Yeah. So you just have to. And Rodez and the area is just magnificent, and very few people go.
Did you see that Rodez? We did that episode on Rodez, right?
Yeah.
Rodez, to my great surprise, to be very honest, just got voted the most livable city in France.
I'm not surprised. It's a good size. There's plenty to do around.
Nature is gorgeous around there. Little villages of beautiful old historical things. It's not as excitingly active, even as a middle-sized city, as I would think. But it just got chosen.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, Elyse, we got to stop gabbing.
We got to stop gabbing before the cat eats me up.
That cat is just, I don't know what it is with you. Because she minds me not at all. Like, I could be here all day, and she doesn't even look at me.
I think in a past life I was a cat.
Because you show up and instantly she's on top of you.
I know.
And it's getting worse.
I know. It's getting worse. I think I better go see a doctor. Bye, Annie.
Thank you, Elyse. Thank you, Naomi Leclerc, Barbara Sanchez, and Rebecca McLeod. McLeod? No, McLeod. Oh, I don't know. Sorry, Rebecca. For pledging to support the show on Patreon this week. Patrons enjoy several rewards that are all listed at patreon.com/join us. Patreon. Join us. No spaces or dashes. I share exclusive content with my patrons, including help with your French comprehension, stories about France, photos, and membership into a secret Facebook group. And of course, patrons can message me directly through Patreon, and these messages always get top priority. I published a great Patreon reward this week about something that is quite tricky for English speakers. When are you supposed to say tu in French, and when is vous better? Again, go to patreon.com/join us to see all the stuff you might be missing. Not sure if your itinerary for France is as good as it needs to be? Let me review it for you. It'll cost you $50, but you'll get a full review. We go through the whole thing on the phone. I send you my recommendations in writing afterwards. Email Annie@joinusinfrance.com to set that up and write itinerary review in the subject line, or you can also do that through Patreon. I just finished one. That was a lot of fun to do. And I have a few more lined up. And I think I really help people because people who book those, they're just... They have some good ideas, but sometimes they're stuck. And so I get them unstuck. And if you'd like to support the show without spending a penny you wouldn't have otherwise, before you go shopping on Amazon, go to the bottom of any page on joinusinfrance.com and click on the Amazon ad. And it's the same with the booking ad. Because you came to those sites through Join Us, I get a small commission and it does not cost you a penny more. So it's win-win. Well, I'm not going to do a personal update this week because I just recorded one other episode. I'm just about to leave for Paris in a few days. I'm working like a mad woman because I'm trying to produce enough. I have to produce 4 episodes this week because I'm going to be gone for 3 Sundays. And then the week after that, we're taking off for the weekend after that. We're taking off for London just for R&R. And so it's a lot to produce before I go off on this tour writing trip. And today, Elyse and I recorded her voice map tour of Toulouse, and we also recorded 2 episodes. So you're lucky you can hear me at all. Anyway. It's been busy, but I still got to walk in with the dog. And my dog was very happy today because she's just 2 years old. And so still very young and still very spry and bouncy and all that. And when we run into other dogs that are also off leash, she gets such a kick out of that. They run around and they have so much fun. I don't let her loose everywhere we go. Just those few places where there's no cars and it's totally safe. And of course, one of the problems we get is that there are people who walk much smaller dogs, and the smaller dogs tend to be afraid of my dog Opie because she's so bouncy and she's big. She's 35 kilos. So when it's a smaller dog showing up, I have to call her back and put her on leash. Otherwise, they would just run away. But when it's a dog her size and I can tell that they're just, itching to play, it's so much fun for her. And that happened twice today. So that was great. Anyway, so last thing I want to mention is that lots of people don't think to look for a podcast to help them plan their trip to France. Please tell them about it. You can help them subscribe to the podcast on their phones. It's easy to do by now. You'll find us through any podcasting app or Spotify or Pandora. And if you have any questions or feedback, please send them to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. I'm not sure I'll be responding to a lot of those the next couple of weeks, but I will do my best. Have a great week of trip planning, and I'll talk to you next Sunday. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.